Starting off this countdown, we have Six Flags in New Orleans. Six Flags is a huge American park corporation with parks all throughout the US, but sadly the one in New Orleans has been abandoned. The park opened in 2000 but only lasted a couple of years. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit the park and the property flooded. The whole park was submerged in 7 feet of water for about a month. The exposure to this water damaged a lot of rides, making them unsafe. There wasn't enough funding for all the repairs that they had to do, so the park was closed. Now it's only used as a film set. In fact, the film Deepwater Horizon and Jurassic World have both filmed scenes there. Moving on at number 9, we have the Land of Oz. Located in North Carolina, the Land of Oz was a park centered around the Wizard of Oz. It first opened in 1970 and featured a beautiful yellow brick road and had an emerald city, and even had one of the dresses Judy Garland wore in the film. However, the buzz surrounding this place quickly died down. Then in 1975, there was a fire at the park that destroyed the Emerald City, and then Judy Garland's dress was stolen. By 1980, the entire park was abandoned. Now you can only visit the park once a year as part of a Halloween attraction. In our 8th spot, we have Jungle Habitat. Located in West Milford, New Jersey, the Jungle Habitat amusement park allowed guests to get up close and personal with the animals. You could do this by walking or driving through a specific area. The drive-through area was supposed to feel like you were on a safari adventure. This amusement park had 70 different species of animals from all around the world. However, there were constant rumors of animals escaping from the park or illegal poachings happening. This, of course, damaged its reputation. But that's not what caused the park to close. It said that Warner Bros. Wanted to make the park bigger, but the residents of the area were not too fond of this idea. In 1976, the park shut down and all the animals were rehomed. However, after the park was closed, frozen remains of several animals were found on the premises, making them wonder what went on there behind the scenes. Coming in at number 7, we have River Country. I've talked about this park before in another video, but I feel like it needs to be mentioned again. River Country Park opened in 1976 and was the first water park at Walt Disney World. The park was designed to look like a swimming hole. It had fake mountains with water slides, and it was a good idea, except a lot of bad things ended up occurring at the park. In 1980, a boy was killed at the park after getting a bacterial infection from one of the pool's water. The bacteria ended up attacking his brain and nervous system, which then killed him. Then, just 2 years later, another guest passed away at the park. Sadly, this guest drowned after coming off one of the water slides. Then in 1989, another drowning occurred. The park closed its doors in November of 2001, but most of it is still there, and it makes for a good place for urban explorers to check out, especially since it's now considered haunted by the souls of the people who died there. Moving on at number 6, we have Bedrock City. Who here grew up watching the Flintstones? Man, that is such a classic cartoon. Back in the 70s, a Flintstones themed amusement park was opened in Williams, Arizona. It had rides such as a giant brontosaurus shaped slide, character statues, and a Flintstones themed diner. It also had a campground if you wanted to stay overnight. But recently, the park changed owners, and well, the new owner had new plans for the park. The park was recently closed just last year, and now this owner plans to make it into a new attraction called Raptor Ranch. Can't lie, it sounds pretty cool. But for now, the park is abandoned and all that's left is a cutout of Wilma standing near the entrance. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Hobbiton. Hobbiton was an amusement park centering around J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. Now, you think that this park would be a huge success since the books were, but nope. It wasn't. Built in the 1970s, this attraction didn't have any rides or games, but instead it was more of like a nature walk, where you could just walk through scenes from the book. And I think that one of the reasons why this park failed was because people want rides and games, something to, like interact with. At At this park, you would walk through the story of Bilbo Baggins, and each set had a voice box that would tell you what was going on in the scene that you were viewing. But it was a failed project and ended up closing in 2009. But if you pass by the area, you can still see a sculpture of Gandalf at the door of Bilbo Baggins' hobbit hole. Coming in at number 4, we have Chippewa Lake Amusement Park. This amusement park was operational for 100 years before closing down. It opened in 1878 and was the hotspot for family fun. In fact, its Ferris wheel was said to be the fastest Ferris wheel in America. I don't know if that's really an accomplishment though, like I can just feel the nausea just thinking about it. Sadly, the park closed down in 1978 because of low attendance. The park was left untouched for quite some time. Then in 2008, a fire destroyed many of the structures. The rest of the structures were demolished that same year. But people really need to stop burning down abandoned amusement parks. In our third spot, we have Prehistoric Forest. This amusement park had everything you could ever ask for. They had a water slide, a waterfall, a smoking volcano, and dinosaurs. Lots and lots of dinosaurs. Built in 1963, this park was meant to mix fun with education. The park was divided into 3 areas. First, you had a safari train ride that would take you through the woods filled with 70 statues of dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures. Then you had a walking tour led by a guide, and you would learn more about the creatures. Lastly, there was another train which took you through the land of the leprechaun. I know, kinda seems weird, like what do dinosaurs and leprechauns have in common? But this taught you legends from early Irish settlers of the area. The park even had a fossil digging pit, which is really cool. I would have loved that. And entry back in 1981 was only $2.75 for an adult and $1.75 for a kid. Man, I wish that's how cheap Disney's tickets were, because if that was the case, I'd be going like every month. Unfortunately, this park closed in 1999. In our second spot, we have Lincoln Park, and I'm not talking about the band here, or an amusement park based on the band. Lincoln Park was an amusement park located between New Bedford and Fall River in Massachusetts. In 1894, the Union Street Railway Company created Lincoln Park to connect Fall River to New Bedford. Lincoln Park was at the end of the trolley line and was originally created as a picnic park. It had picnic tables, a playground, and some grills to make your own food. Eventually, it transformed into an amusement park. It was originally named Midway Park or Westport Park, but was later changed to Lincoln Park. This park was known for its ride, the Comet, which was a 300-foot long wooden roller coaster. But in 1986, a fatal accident occurred on this roller coaster, which kind of scared a lot of people, and they're like, is it really as safe as you claim it to be? Then in 1987, another accident occurred on another roller coaster, but thankfully this time no one was injured. But the park was closed in 1987. Then in the 1990s, a series of fires destroyed 90% of the park and the rides. What's with all these parks catching on fire? Like seriously, Smokey the Bear is going to find out. And in our number 1 spot, we have Lake Shawnee. This is one amusement park that does not have a child-friendly past. Apparently, the park was built on the site of the Clay family massacre. Basically, members of a family were kidnapped and killed on the land. Whoever thought it was a good spot for an amusement park should have been fired. The park opened in 1926 and was rumored to be haunted. After the death of 2 park guests, the park closed in 1966. Now it's said that the ghosts of the park's victims can be seen there at night.
In our number 10 spot, we have the Pripyat Amusement Park. Ever heard of a town called Pripyat? Well, I'd be surprised to hear that you haven't, as this is a very known town around the world as a very horrible disaster once occurred there. I am speaking, of course, of the Chernobyl plant explosion that took place in 1986. Well, just before the explosion, Pripyat was planning on opening up an amusement park, the Pripyat Amusement Park, and the opening was scheduled for 5 days after the day that the explosion happened. Well, as you can can imagine, the explosion was so bad that the amusement park plans were turned upside down. The park owners opened the park for one day to try to distract everyone from the horrible disaster, but as you can imagine, as everyone fled, the park closed and never reopened. The Ferris wheel is still standing there today, and there are dark tours that go through the park and the abandoned town. In our number 9 spot, we have Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park was located in West Virginia, and it was open from 1926 till 1966. This park ended up closing because it began to hold a horrible reputation, as a few killings happened on its grounds. One accidental, one seemingly not, and apparently others that haven't been confirmed, but nonetheless, this began to make visitors uncomfortable, and so the park shut down. People believe it to be haunted by the ghosts of the young ones that passed away there, but also people believe that the land was cursed from the start, as there was a quarrel between a First Nation tribe and a European settler once in this area. It had a brutal history from 1783, where the Shawnee Native American tribe ended up killing the offspring of the first man that made a home in their area, named Mitchell Clay. But there is so much more to the story, as apparently the park was built on a Native American burial ground, and many young ones were buried there. People believe these ghosts could be haunting the park too, but in any case, no one can deny that the park, even today, feels haunted. In our number 8 spot, we have Joyland Amusement Park. Located in Kansas, the Joyland Amusement Park was one of the biggest when it opened in 1949. 57 acres, in fact. It was doing very well until a lot of ride-related deaths started occurring. Then there was a massive scandal where an employee was killed by some people visiting the park, and that caused a lot of unwanted press. Then an employee was injured by a roller coaster, and finally someone fell off of a Ferris wheel in 2004. As you can imagine, all of these incidents led to lawsuits and eventually financial ruin for the park, where they then had to shut down. Apparently the park was purchased in 2018 with plans to turn it into a concert venue slash wedding venue, but man, I hope they have had like 10 priests bless this ground first before they open it. In our number 7 spot, we have Dreamland Park. The Dreamland Park was located in Pennsylvania, and it opened in 1939. When this park opened, it didn't have too many attractions as you would imagine a typical amusement park to have. The park only had a roller rink, a band theater, a few rides, and a small car race track, and some picnic areas. In August of 1969 though, 2 people by the name of Marilyn Scheckler and Glenn Eckert were killed on the premise, and that is where the park began to have a reputation for being associated with gangs, gambling, and dark dealings. Another killing took place on the grounds in the 90s, and that is what led to the published non-fiction novel about the park. In our number 6 spot, we have the Magic Harbor Park. Here is another abandoned park with a dark history. Magic Harbor, located near Myrtle Beach, opened in 1954. In 1976, one of the owners and his son were fatally injured by an employee of the park, which resulted in them both passing away. After this horrible incident, the wife of the park owner did not want to continue running the park, so it went into foreclosure and the bank took over. It was eventually bought out again, but in 1984, another tragedy happened where a young girl passed away after falling off a ride, and the park was sued for $12 million. With its poor reputation and now horrible financial issues, the park eventually closed. In our number 5 spot, we have Holy Land, USA. This is an old Christian theme park, as you may have deduced from the title. Holy Land. It opened in 1960, and apparently the theme park contained replicas of famous scenes from the Bible, such as the Garden of Eden, the Last Supper, etc. A large cross was placed on a hill and a big sign with its name on it that is apparently hard to miss if you're driving along Interstate 84 in Waterbury, Connecticut. Apparently the park was a hit and a Baptist owned it. Makes sense. And he originally closed the park in the 80s to work on expanding it, but then he passed away. Nuns of the area were maintaining the grounds, but over the years it got worse and worse due to vandalism and an unfortunate killing that took place under the cross. In our number 4 spot, we have Brandywine Springs. The Brandywine Springs amusement park opened in 1886 in Williamton, Delaware, and it was a good example of what you can imagine as good, clean fun. The park had a wooden wooden roller coaster, a train, restaurants, a castle house, and much more. The park was a hotspot until a tragedy occurred when an employee and another male was fatally injured, and this certainly changed the park for good. The park closed in 1923, around the time that cars became more available to the average person, which made it easier for people to travel, and then they would find new adventures elsewhere and not spend their time/money at the park. Apparently the park is in ruins at the moment, but there are plans to put up signs and photographs of where the major attractions once stood so that people that walk through it can learn a little about its history. Well, that's fun. Maybe you're not prohibited from visiting this one. In our number 3 spot, we have Kojonuma Leisureland. Once a very popular amusement park in Japan, eventually it turned into something quite dark. It had all of the fun amusement park rides and was beloved by many, despite its ghost stories. Unlike many of the other parks here, the park only closed in 2000 due to a drop in visitors, which is believed to be the cause of Japan's declining birth rate and the economic crisis. However, there is a strange urban legend about the park that is still told today that has urban explorers wanting to visit the land. Apparently, there is a lake by the park that is known to have a large snake population, and as the legend goes, a pregnant woman who lived near there gave birth to a serpent baby who escaped into the water, and every night the woman would hear the baby cry. It drove her mad, and she ended up taking her own life in the lake, and it was her ghost that people believed haunted the park. Dark. People have reported hearing her and her serpent baby's cries. In our number 2 spot, we have Rocky Point Amusement Park. Rocky Point Amusement Park, located in Warwick, Rhode Island, opened in 1847 and didn't close till 1995. It had a long history of over 150 years of being active, and it attracted a lot of very famous guests who performed there over the years. Some of the later guests you would know include Pat Benatar, the Ramones, and a personal fave of mine, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It only had one killing on site ever recorded, and it was in 1893 when a clinically insane man fatally injured his daughter. The park was so popular that eventually people forgot about the incident. This is one park that would honestly just be sad to visit because it seems like it was so cool. I don't wish sadness for you, so don't go and visit it. In our number 1 spot, we have Gulliver's Kingdom. Gulliver's Kingdom, an amusement park in Japan that opened in 1997 near the base of Mount Fuji, is probably the creepiest park I have ever seen. I mean, the park was based off of a book called Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, and so I bet the park wouldn't feel as creepy for people that have read the book. The park famously had a giant lying on its back, a picture that we can assume is taken from the book. The park existed for only about 10 years before it closed, due to the park just not resonating with the people as the owners thought it would. Honestly, an idea like this feels too big for the 90s. People are way more open now creatively, so I bet it would be a hit these days. Instagram was invented a little too late. At this point, the park has been demolished, so it's no longer a site for urban explorers, but the pictures of this very chilling park will live on in our brains forever. Starting us off at number 10 is Fire Mountain. In the mid-90s, Fire Mountain was an unbuilt roller coaster that park officials were considering adding to the Adventureland area of the Magic Kingdom. The ride was based on the film Atlantis: The Lost Empire and would have taken park goers to an active volcano located between Splash Mountain and Pirates of the Caribbean. The story of the ride was set in 1916. Preston Whitmore is trying to make Atlantis' existence public and starts offering expeditions to visitors. The vehicles they're in are forced to unexpectedly take a detour through the volcano.
But the whole plan was cancelled due to the film doing shockingly bad and underperforming at the box office. The ride was originally designed to be built to compete with Universal Studios' Islands of Adventure, but after visiting it and basically realizing that it was a mess and no threat to Walt Disney World, they decided to just cancel the whole construction of this ride.
Before we visited them, they're like, this ain't.
They're like, oh, this is our competition?
Yeah.
Never mind. In our 9th spot, we have The Nightmare Before Christmas. I am disappointed that this project never got finished because I'm a huge fan of The Nightmare Before Christmas and Jack Skellington. It's just a classic movie. Is it a movie to watch during Halloween? Is it a movie to watch during Christmas? The answer is, it's a movie to watch during both of my favorite holidays. Like, that's amazing. But anyways, The Nightmare Before Christmas ride was going to be built beside the evil It's a Small World ride at Disneyland. Seriously, that ride is is cursed or something. It was going to have guests in a flying coffin help Jack save Christmas. And at the end of the ride, it was going to show Jack and Sally hugging in the snow. How cute. But for some reason, the project was scrapped. However, every year from Halloween to Christmas, Disneyland redecorates the Haunted Mansion ride to be Nightmare Before Christmas themed. So, in a way, we get our nightmare fix, but not in the way that they originally intended.
At number 8, we have Pop Century Resorts. The foundation of the resort had two parts to it, the legendary years and the classic years, and those two parts were connected by a bridge called the Generation Gap. Very literal and ironic, I know. But the legendary years would have represented the 1900s all the way to the 40s, and the classic years would have represented the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. The original plan was for the resort to open in 2001, but then due to construction delays it was pushed back another year. And then 9/11 happened, which plummeted tourism to basically nothing. The opening was then postponed again because there was zero demand for hotel rooms. Construction on the classic years side continued until its opening in 2003, but the legendary years side hasn't been touched since 2001. In 2006, Disney announced they would restart construction on the abandoned side, but that never happened. LOL. In 2010, it was announced Disney's Art of Animation Resort would be replacing the legendary side, but the original buildings still stand. As for the classic years side, we don't talk about that no more.
Making our way down the list at number 7, we have the Food Rocks. Food Rocks was opened in 1994 and featured a musical show with animatronic figures. Kind of like the Chuck E. Cheese band, but more classy in a way and less scary.
I don't think it can be classy in any way.
Well, I don't know, but the Chuck E. Cheese band is terrifying with their
really
evil eyes. The Food Rocks was an animatronic show in the Land Pavilion at Epcot. It opened in 1994 and was all about the importance of eating healthy. The animatronics were different types of food, but with human features. They then would make funny parodies of songs like "Every Breath You Take" was "Every Bite You Take."
That's a great song, first of all. Just wanted to put that out there. Now, the vaudeville style show was basically meant to teach kids about the 4 food groups, but was eventually shut down in 2004. But according to Modern Mouse Radio, the whole stage was left intact and is just hidden behind the walls. Even the animatronic figures are said to be resting behind the walls, so while you're queuing up for that flight simulator ride, just remember those singing food items are right there.
Ew. Can you imagine if they just started singing all of a sudden? They're like, "Every bite you take."
Dude, I'd get so scared. I'm like, where's this coming
what
from?
is this coming from?
Are you hearing that? Like, where is that?
So creepy. In our 6th spot, we have the Beastly Kingdom. The original plans for the Animal Kingdom was supposed to incorporate 3 categories of animals: real, extinct, and imaginary. So the Beastly Kingdom was supposed to be a section of the Animal Kingdom Park that focused on mythological animals. They had plans to have a quest of the Unicorn Hedge Maze, a boat ride based on Fantasia, and even a massive castle home to a fire-breathing dragon. Like, that sounds awesome. And that castle's dragon was planned to be the largest animatronic creature in the whole park. Now, there is no conclusive reason as to why this idea was abandoned, but every year there is new hope that Disney will follow through with this idea.
Coming in at number 5 is Walt Disney's Riverfront Square. Okay, so this project was a huge deal because it was meant to be Disney's second park after the one in California. Now, if you weren't aware, Walt Disney grew up in Missouri, so in 1963 he met up with St. Louis's mayor to talk about the plans. It was meant to be a theme park right by the riverfront area, which worked out since the area was already undergoing renovations due to a city celebration. The park would have taken up 2 blocks and its entrance would have been very similar to Disneyland's Main Street one. Attractions like the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, and the Western Riverboat ride were all meant to be at this park. Unfortunately, the plans for the park completely fell through in 1965 due to financial and ownership issues. Walt then turned all his focus to the Walt Disney World in Florida, and I mean, it's a good thing he did too. That one's vibing. At number 4 is the People Mover. So this ride was essentially a transport attraction that opened up at Tomorrowland at Disneyland, California back in 1967. Parkgoers would board these small trains that toured around Tomorrowland from above, and as fun and safe as that ride sounds, it really wasn't. A month into the ride being in operation, a 16-year-old guy tripped and fell onto the track, and the oncoming trains crushed him and dragged his body for a few hundred feet before actually stopping. Can you imagine having a death only 1 month into the ride opening? That is not a good track record. And no, that is not the only death the ride caused.
Was that a pun intended?
Yes.
This is not a good track. That was clever. I like that. But seriously, that is terrifying. But that wasn't the reason why the ride was closed. The ride was closed in August of 1995 because the Disney team thought that it was too old school. As a result, it was replaced by the Rocket Rods 3 years later, which then didn't last too long as well. But not to fear, a lot of the pieces of the train from the original ride are still used in other parts around the resort. And the track is still in Tomorrowland, just unused. In 2010, Disney announced that the ride was coming back, but it's been 10 years and nothing has happened. So let's just hope that they get that whole death by ride thing figured out. Yeah. We don't need any more of those.
10 years, I don't think the comeback's happening.
No, it's definitely not. Coming in at number 3, we have Cranium Command. The Wonder of the Life Pavilion had a short-lived life. It opened in October of 1989 and closed in 2007. The pavilion was designed to be educational yet fun. It focused all about the human body. Now, one of the rides at this attraction was called Cranium Command. For this ride, guests were sent on a mission into the human brain of a 12-year-old boy. Yeah, not creepy at all. You were then called a Cranium Commando, and alongside Buzzy, a tiny soldier, you would help complete this mission. Not gonna lie, I've seen footage from this ride and it looks really creepy. So you're inside a theater that is designed to look like you're inside this boy's head. So you're inside his head, looking out of his eyes, seeing what he is seeing. Then it's kind of like a simulator ride where you just watch the story unfold while your chair vibrates and moves to whatever is happening. But unfortunately, this ride was abandoned after having one of their sponsors back out.
Now at number 2 is Discovery Island. This 11.5-acre island is located on Walt Disney World's property and was actually open to guests between 1974 to 1999. Walt bought the island in 1965 and it was initially called Treasure Island. Parkgoers went there to look at wildlife because it was essentially a miniature zoo. You could look at animals like flamingos, swans, and more. Fun fact, the island's facilities were the last known home of the dusky seaside sparrow before it went extinct. Things got ugly in 1989 when Peter accused Disney of mistreating vultures that landed on the island. Disney actually even confirmed this by saying some of the birds died while employees tried to capture them. Officials then charged him with 16 counts of animal cruelty, but they were eventually dropped. The island closed in 1999 for undisclosed reasons, and all of its animals got moved to Disney's Animal Kingdom. The island is still there, just sitting there abandoned with zero signs of development. Funnily enough, a man went to the island in April of this year during the pandemic. He called it a tropical paradise and had no idea it was off limits. He was soon arrested.
And finally, in our number 1 spot is River Country Park. River Country Park opened in 1976 and was the first water park at Walt Disney World. The park was designed to look like a swimming hole and had fake mountains with water slides. But a lot of tragedy occurred at this park, which contributed to being shut down. In 1980, a boy was killed at the park after getting a bacterial infection from one of the pool's water. The bacteria attacked his brain and nervous system, which then killed him.
I was smiling all throughout she was talking about that death. I wasn't smiling at the death, I was just smiling at something Lindsay did beforehand. I think I'm some sadistic fool. Either way, I digress. Then, just 2 years later, another boy passed away at the park. Sadly, he drowned after coming off of one of the water slides. Like, surely after the first death, they would have improved things, installed more safety measures, at least something.
I guess not, because then in 1989, another boy drowned there. What's creepy is that their advertisements read, "Bring a swimsuit and a smile. You're likely to wear both out at River Country." More like, bring a swimsuit and a death wish. Like, seriously, it's tragic what happened there.
Oh god. The park then closed its doors in November of 2001, but most of it is still there. In fact, some say that the park is now haunted. People have speculated that the land is permanently cursed with bad luck, which is what makes it very attractive to urban explorers who go there.
We should go there for a future video.
Oh, I don't know about that. Starting us off at number 10 is Six Flags New Orleans. Now this was the one coming up the most in all my searches, so I thought it was only fitting that we started with this one. Now this 140-acre park originally opened its doors in 2000 as Jazzland, but was leased by Six Flags from 2002 till 2009, and that's when its name was changed. However, tragedy struck in the morning of August 29th, 2005 when Hurricane Katrina hit New New Orleans. Since the park was located right next to Lake Pontchartrain, the water flooded into the park and the drainage pipes just couldn't keep up. After all was said and done, the park was under 20 feet of water and it took more than a month to drain. How screwed up is that? Due to the major wind and water damage, the park was closed indefinitely, and I don't think you guys realize how bad it actually was. 80% of the buildings were demolished, every single flat ride was destroyed, and the one ride that kind of survived was the Batman the Ride roller coaster. The company didn't want to rebuild the park since it was their least profitable one anyway and tried to leave their 75-year lease, but the mayor was like, nah, you have to rebuild. Either way, the park's donezo. Coming in at number 9 is Auto World. Located in Flint, Michigan, Auto World was an indoor theme park that started its operation back in 1984. The plan was to try and get tourists to come to Flint, and at its grand opening the governor even said it would trigger the rebirth of the great city of Flint. It took 2 decades of planning and it opened with a huge parade and a lot of media attention. It was predicted that it would bring in 1 million guests a year, but by the fall of that year the numbers were already going down. The attractions included a replica of historic downtown Flint, a cabin with mannequin Jacob Smith inside of it, a Ferris wheel, a carousel, a historical carnival ride, and more. By December of that year, it was announced they'd only be open during weekends, and by January they'd closed it down completely. Yes, the park opened for brief periods over the next few years, but by 1994 it was permanently closed. Damn, what a rough go. Didn't even last 1 proper year of being open full time. Yikes. At number 8 we have Six Flags Astro World. Am I the only one that thought Six Flags made some deal with Travis Scott and it was gonna be somehow related to him? I was gonna be like, I'm the highest in the room, and then I realized I got it way off. Opened in 1968, Astro World was a seasonal park located in Houston, and it was actually meant to be part of Astrodome initially, but was sold to Six Flags in 1975. The park had 10 themed areas, and its water park sister Water World became part of it in 2002. There was a 610 limited train, Alpine Valley, and Oriental Village. I just hate the word Oriental to describe things in the West. Like, I know for a fact by Oriental Village they mean an East Asian inspired theme, and Oriental just feels like they're trying to other you, and I just don't like it. Anywho, rant over. Anyway, on the 12th of September 2005 it was announced that Astro World would be closing and getting demolished. Despite wanting to sell it for $150 million, they ended up selling it for $77 million, which is a shocking loss. Filling at number 7 slot is Six Flags Dubai. Again, another knife to the heart with this one. First Dubai Land and now this. Now, the planned theme park was in the works for years and was initially meant to open way back in November of 2011. Then, due to a failed payment, the contract was terminated but then revived and scheduled to open in 2019. And it was going to be colossal, taking up 5 million square feet. It had 27 rides, with rides themed after other Six Flags locations like Magic Mountain from the California location, etc. The construction of the park stopped in 2018 since Dubai already has 3 other huge parks: Legoland Dubai, Motion Gate Dubai, and Bollywood Park, and none of those were pulling in the numbers they wanted, so the shareholders were like, maybe this isn't in our best interests, and just ditched the project. Now at number 6 is Wyandotte Lake. This park had humble beginnings. It kind of like started from the bottom, now we it. Operating as a picnic and recreational park way back in 1896. In the 40s it was changed into winter storage for carnival rides, but slowly but surely they started adding rides like the Jet Flyer. In 1995, Premier Parks bought the property and they decided to keep the park's name and continue operating. Fun fact, basically Premier Parks was what Six Flags was called before obviously they changed the name and acquired the Six Flags company. By 2006, Six Flags revealed they had been losing money from the park every year since 1999, and that they were going to sell it to Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. The latter invested something like $45 million to redevelop the whole place, whereas Six Flags was like, I'm not doing that. Nope. Coming in at number 5 is Six Flags Atlantis. I used to hate water parks as a kid since I couldn't go with my glasses, and because I didn't wear contacts back then I just could not see and it just pissed me off. Anyway, as you could have guessed, Six Flags Atlantis was a water park in Hollywood that opened up back in 1979. Well, initially it was a private venture called Atlantis the Water Kingdom, but they didn't have enough money to finish it, so Six Flags was like, here we are, sell it to us. Now, the water park included a lake with water ski shows, a wave pool, 7-story slide tower, and more. Now, unfortunately, due to another hurricane, Hurricane Andrew, the park was hugely damaged in 1992 and it was closed and auctioned off. Nowadays there's a cool plaza that takes up the space. There's now a Kmart instead of a wave pool, so I mean, a downgrade for sure, but I mean, times are tough, you guys. And number 4 is Six Flags Power Plant, which sounds like the shittiest theme park ever. Like, how is that name appealing at all? Hey guys, do you want to have fun at the power plant? Like, no, that has no ring to it. Located inside the Inner Harbor district of Baltimore, Six Flags acquired the property in 1985 and tried to turn it into an indoor theme park. This was their chance at making basically Auto World 2.0, and it was actually more successful than its predecessor, but it also closed down very quickly and transformed into a Hard Rock Cafe, then a Gold's Gym, a Barnes & Noble, and so on. Filling at number 3 slot is Warner Bros. Movie World Germany. So this park started off as a family-owned thing back in 1967 and was sold to numerous different people throughout the years. In 1994, Warner Bros. Bought it and started building what was Warner Bros. Movie World Germany and had the grand opening 2 years later. It had a bunch of attractions and rides and was split into 7 different areas. There was the Hollywood Street set, which showed Area 51, the Lost Temple, and Looney Tunes 4D. There was a Streets of New York thing, Nick Clan, Santa Monica Pier, the Old West, and so on. By the end of 1999, they had sold it to Premier Parks, which is again what Six Flags used to be called, but the other attractions that came in the following years made the park very unpopular. Families stopped coming, and soon even adrenaline junkies stopped coming, and that's when you know it's bad, when even they stop coming. Eventually, they sold it to Star Parks and they opened it as Movie Park Germany, which is what it still currently is. Now at number 2 is Six Flags Worlds of Adventure. Initially opening at Geauga Lake in 1887, this recreation area was bought by Premier Parks in 1995 and renamed to Six Flags Ohio. Then with the acquisition of SeaWorld Ohio, the 2 parks became Six Flags Worlds of Adventure, and I don't even think I have to go into how problematic and bad SeaWorld is. You guys know, you've seen the documentary Blackfish, I don't have to tell you. Now the park got 20 additional new rides, including Roadrunner Express, Villain, Batman Night Flight, etc. They wanted to add rides to SeaWorld as well, but by combining the parks, SeaWorld created the biggest theme park in the world at that time. The SeaWorld side stayed the wildlife area, featuring mainly marine shows, well, not really shows, more like exploitation and entrapment and depression and just not treating the animals right, but anywho. They then expanded that side further by adding Hurricane Mountain, which was the largest water slide in North America, which is ridiculous. Sadly, by 2004 they were facing high debt and sold the park to Cedar Fair, who closed down the park in September of 2007, and good riddance to those. And finally, at number 1 is Wild Waves and Enchanted Village. The park has a super long history as well, so it opened up as the Enchanted Village back in 1977 and was hugely popular in the summer in the Washington area. It had around 6 rides and took up 12 acres, but in 1984 the Wild Waves water park was built right next to it. Then in 2000, Six Flags bought it for $19.3 million, and at this point it had expanded to 70 acres with over 20 rides. They thought of splitting the park into 2 separate parks in 2016 to make more money, and it worked, but they had this whole park hopping ticket thing that was super complicated that all the customers just hated, so they were like, okay, let's not do this. In 2007, they sold the park to CNL Income Properties, and it's a good thing they did too, because in 2016, there was a drowning incident in the activity pool. You know what I mean? A 33-year-old man had drowned, which a bunch of kids had reported to the lifeguard, but initially they thought he was just playing a prank on them by lying at the bottom of the pool, but they stopped laughing once they realized that guy truly be dead.
Alright, we're going to start off at number 10 now with the Pripyat Amusement Park. This is an abandoned park in Pripyat, Ukraine that was meant to be opened on May 1st, 1980. 1986. Unfortunately, just 5 days before that date, the nearby nuclear power plant at Chernobyl went into meltdown. Everyone in the area was forced to evacuate the city. As with everything else there, the park was left just as it was. Radiation levels there have been among the highest levels recorded in the whole of Pripyat. Even today, you will need special permission to get even close. Moving on to number 9 now, we have Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. This park in southern West Virginia was abandoned in 1966 after the accidental deaths of 2 children. A little girl in a pink ruffled dress died after climbing into the circling swing set. A little boy also drowned in the amusement park's swimming pond. Some say the park was cursed even before its creation, after being built on the ground where deadly murders took place between Native Americans and European settlers during the late 1700s. The park opens up sometimes for tours in the week before Halloween, and some people have sworn they've seen the little girl there in her dress, covered in blood and just staring at them. Next up at number 8 now, we have Spree Park. This is an abandoned park in Berlin that opened in 1969. At its height, the park attracted over 1.5 million people per year. It boasted a roller coaster, 2 game watercourses, a stage, a western town and an English village. By 1999 though, the park was struggling to cope with large debts. They increased the admission fee, but that only served to drive away visitors. By 2001, they entertained just 400,000 visitors a year. The park closed the following year. In the years since then, a fire devastated major parts of the park. It's thought that someone intentionally did this. These days, Spree Park is nothing more than a creepy, burnt out husk with no certain plans for the future. Next up at number 7 now, we have Six Flags New Orleans. When Hurricane Katrina struck the Caribbean and southern US states, it devastated a lot of places. One of them was the Six Flags amusement park in New Orleans. As you can see from these images, the damage was so immense that the owners were just forced to abandon it altogether. The only visitors to the site now are trespassers who rip fences and leave graffiti. The place is also home to boars, snakes and other animals that have taken advantage of the lack of human presence. Next up at number 6 now, we have Encore Garden. This abandoned park in Taiwan lies just east of Taichung City. It was extremely popular during the 1990s, attracting visitors from all around. Then, in unclear circumstances, the park just closed. Rumours spread about what the reason could be. Some say there was a serious accident on the huge Ferris wheel that the park was known for. Others maintain that an earthquake in 1999 caused damage that was just too serious to repair. Next up at number 5 now, we have Gulliver's Kingdom. This theme park was built in the shadow of Japan's Mount Fuji and was partially funded by the government. The ride centered around the story of Gulliver, a traveler who discovered an island full of tiny people. The park opened in 1997 but barely lasted 4 years. The reasons for its failure are cited as a lack of main attractions, but also its proximity to the notorious Suicide Forest, a place that earned its name from being a favoured suicide spot for people in Japan. At number 4 now, we have Okpo Land. This amusement park is on the outskirts of Okpo in South Korea. It was very popular during the 90s and became one of Asia's most famous amusement parks. The duck ride became a crowd favourite, but tragically people started getting seriously injured on it. Eventually someone died on it. There was outrage and Okpo Land offered no compensation or apology. In 1999, a little girl died after one of the duck carts derailed and capsized. The park was closed soon after that. The derailed cart that killed the girl was still left hanging over the edge. It became a popular site for urban explorers until it was demolished in 2011. At number 3 now, we have Daddy Park. Built in 1950, this was Belgium's first private amusement park, built for children of pilgrims visiting the nearby basilica. It was successful for many years, but that all came to an end in 2000. The Nautic jet ride was notoriously dangerous, but no improvements were ever made to it. In that year, a boy lost his arm on the ride. The park struggled on for a while, but closed down in 2002 for renovations. For whatever reason, those renovations never took place, and the park was abandoned, never to reopen again. Today, it remains almost as it was left. Parts of it were demolished, but many of the buildings and smaller attractions remain. Next up at number 2 now, we have Wonderland Amusement Park. This park in China was supposed to be the country's answer to Disneyland's Cinderella Castle. It was still in development in 2000 when the plug was pulled on the whole project. According to National Geographic, the developer, local government and farmers all could not agree on the value of the land, and so work was stopped while the castle was only half built. Despite the owners abandoning Wonderland Park, the locals did not. They still tend to the plants that grow around the castle and apparently use the castle itself as a communal activity centre. And finally at number 1 now, we have Joyland. This park in Kansas was once the largest in the state and boasted 20 rides for kids and adults alike. It ran for more than 50 years until 2004. That was the year a 13-year-old girl fell from the Ferris wheel and sustained major injuries. The park closed down to assess its own safety. Although it planned to open again in 2006, it never did. The owners have since demolished most of the major attractions.
At number 10 we have King Island, Ohio. Alright, we're gonna kick off this list with a theme park from the northern American state. King Island is an amazing theme park because it's been double stacked. It's half amusement park, half water park. Dude, that means you could spend your day riding rides in the sun and then jump into a pool that is 90% pee to cool off. That sounds like a good Saturday afternoon to me. And on the amusement park side, it's loaded with 15 roller coasters. That means there's 15 places you could post up and watch people puke. Hilarious. Oh, and this park is old as hell. It was thrown up in 1972. Now, why is it on this list? Well, because there is a graveyard within the boundaries of the theme park, and it seems to have brought some unwanted guests. There have been sightings of several ghosts, specifically that of 2 kids, one who is a little girl in a blue dress and one who's a little boy wearing a white suit. I know these 2 are dead, but at least they get to spend the rest of their lives looking sharp as hell. You get to wear a white suit for the rest of your life? That's dope. In the number 9 spot we have the Lake Swanee Amusement Park. Alright, we got an old creepy one for you guys. The Lake Swanee Amusement Park was built in the 1920s because it was some businessman's dream to build something for the children of West Virginia. Well, he should have picked a better spot because this place used to be a native burial ground. People have estimated that 3,000 Native Americans were buried there. That's a lot of ghosts. On top of that, since the park has been open, there have been about 6 deaths. Most of them were kids. The place was closed down in 1966 because when you have a bunch of kids die at your park, it doesn't make it seem like it's a very good time. At number 8 we have Tatakananuma, Greenland, Japan. Boom, got that. Alright, let's jump over to Japan now to what is probably one of the worst cases of workplace safety I have ever heard of. This place opened in 1973. The people were loving it. Everyone was going. They were singing dope anime songs. The place was a paradise. But after 2 years, it was closed down. Now the bigwigs in charge of everything said that the place was shut down because they needed repairs. But the people who lived close to the amusement park said that it was shut down because too many people died there. Holy crap, dude. Back in 1973, people really let stuff slide before they would start to take action. Now if someone finds a hair in the Alfredo, they'll shut down an entire chain of restaurants just through a few tweets. Well, I guess they mopped up all the bodies because in 1986 they reopened for about 13 years and then closed down again. Now if you go and explore this abandoned amusement park, it's packed full of ghosts. There was even one case of a dude going in there for a little expedition back in 2007. He took a bunch of photos trying to capture the creepy landscape, but none of them came through. The only one that saved to his camera was of a little ghostly girl. Ugh, I hate ghost kids. At number 7 we have Holy Land, Waterbury, Connecticut. Yes, just what the public wants, a church-themed amusement park. Hey kids, remember how we said we're gonna have fun all day, ride rides, eat ice cream, and get overexposed to the sun? Well, we're gonna do none of that. We're gonna go to the only amusement park with a chapel, and you're gonna pray and read the Bible. Woo, sounds like a blast. Well, this place was actually a hot spot in its heyday. It would pull in around 40,000 people a year. But the park was closed down for repairs in 1984, and then just 2 years later the owner died. Turns out no one wants to reopen and run an amusement park that replaced good times with Psalms. As the place became more and more run down, there have been many reports of ghost sightings and other creepy things. People passing by say they've seen the ghost of a woman standing in the gates, and in 2010 there was a girl found dead in the park. At number 6 we have Disneyland, California. Let's go, baby. This place is super haunted. If you want to see ghosts, well, this is the place to be. Go ride Space Mountain. There is a ghost that will sit next to people who have no one sitting beside them because he doesn't want them to be by themselves. That's so cool. And on the park grounds, there's a ghost of a woman who will protect lost children and take them to a safe place. I think they call that the Lost and Found. That's where we put lost kids, right? There's even the ghost of Walt Disney chilling in his old apartment. I love that Disneyland is such an awesome place that even the ghosts are friendly. Oh my god, it's so sweet. At number 5 we have Raging Waters, California. Water park time. Let's go collect some band-aids. This place is massive and has been a long-standing attraction in California. People just love zipping down slides and swimming in water that has enough dead skin in it to build your own film crew. And if you ever decided to make a trip down there, you should know that there's a little hidden attraction. Next to the first aid station is a ghost of a 9-year-old girl. It's said that the girl died in the park back in 1985 and her ghost has been floating around trying to find her parents. Very eerie. At number 4 we have Thorpe Park in Surrey, England. So in 1979 a man wanted to build a water-themed amusement park on a lake, and he did this by building a giant gravel pit and then placed the park right on top of it. It was a massive success. In fact, it's still open to this day. Honestly, the place has had very few problems until 2011 when they wanted to build an expansion on the park, and the workers started to get so freaked out by ghostly sightings that they had to stop working. There was so much non-stop paranormal activity that the owner brought in a team of paranormal investigators, and they found that the extension was digging into an ancient burial ground. So they decided to spend millions to move the extension to a different part of the park. That's how bad the ghost problem was. At number 3 we have Taman Festival Park in Bali. This old abandoned park was thrown up in 1997, and for a time it was a major tourist attraction. People from all over the world were visiting this thing, mainly to go check out what was the world's first inverted roller coaster. Very cool. That's amazing. Spiraling puke would fly right out of it. How many times am I going to talk about puke in this video? I don't know. I think puking is hilarious. I love talking about it. Send me puke videos. I'll 100% watch them and laugh at it. I love it. Back to the list. This place was shut down after a bolt of lightning smashed into the park on Friday the 13th. It did some major damage and there wasn't enough money in the bank to pay for the repairs. So now it's just abandoned. But all the locals in the area refuse to go near this thing. They say the park is a meeting place for evil from all over the island. And this old abandoned amusement park is called the most haunted place in Bali. At number 2 we have Pripyat Amusement Park in the Ukraine. I can't imagine how pissed I would be if I was the guy who spent the money to have this thing built. The Pripyat Amusement Park was just about a 10-minute drive from the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. This place was open for 1 day before word came through the winds that if they stayed there, they would die. So they had to shut down right away. Now there might not be a ghost there, but they're said to be the dark bird of Chernobyl. The dark bird of Chernobyl is said to be a demonic being who caused the meltdown of the nuclear power plant. Now it roams the land and I would assume murders people. I don't know what demons do in their spare time. And at number 1 on the list we have Magic Kingdom, Florida, also known as Disney World. The happiest place on earth. It's a place where you have to be happy or else. I wonder what happens if you walk around there all sad. I bet a guy dressed as Donald Duck puts a chloroform rag over your mouth and then drags you into a back room and they inject you with Walt Disney's blood until you're smiling. I mean, that's what I guess. I don't know if that's true. Well, this place also happens to be very haunted. Why? Because people bring their dead relatives' ashes there to spread them over the park. It's such a problem that Disney World has a rule against it. It's said that the Pirates of the Caribbean ride is one of the most haunted places on the park. Every day when the workers come in, they have to say good morning to George. If they don't say good morning to George, the ride will break down for that day, which I think is super dope. Say good morning to George. Also, say good morning to Carl.